So their use of files are hello and smile, like pretty positive. And yeah, so it's okay that I don't know these two players because the community is pretty huge and but very kind. And we're about to get started. At least davidaei is starting yet. So that's the prologue. The prologue is pretty short, just like explaining you how to jump and how to climb and how to dash at the ending of the prologue. And you might wonder why those players are jumping around all the time. Jumping gives you a minimal boost, like a few frames, a few pixels. And if you constantly jump, you can save around 1 second in this prologue. Like, it's free, so we take it. And yeah, there you dash. And now you know all the basics of the game. So I try to quickly cover all the movement options. So there are hyper dashes, wave dashes, ultra dashes, and dash jumps. So they all have the different usage and the different advantages and stuff. So dash jumps are just dashing left to or right and then jump. It's a little bit slower than the others, but you gain more height. So it has some places where it gets used. Hypers or wave dashes, like wave dashes are hypers but perform from the air, is when you do a diagonal downwards input of a dash and then jump quickly afterwards, so you cover you gain a lot of momentum and the jump will carry it over. So yeah, it's the fastest way to travel. And then there are ultras, you do a hyper or a wave dash, and quickly afterwards you dash diagonal downwards again. Like, you have to do an extended hyper or ultra. Extended means that you delay your jump a little bit, so you have your dash afterwards again. Because normally when you dash and immediately jump, you don't have your dash, but if you delay it a little bit, you will keep the dash. And then you can do an ultra, which like is just a far, like you will cover more distance with an ultra than on hyper, but it's also harder to perform. So you're seeing them already doing a lot of hypers and ultras, hypers and supers, ultras not yet, I guess. And I sometimes say supers, like I've heard somewhere the name super for just dash jumps. So davidaei is trying to do an extended wave dash or extended hyper, so he keeps his dash and makes them spike jump. So what davidaei they did there was not really a spike jump, it's just called a spike jump because it looks like a jump from the spikes, but you're actually jumping from that little cliff besides the spikes. So that was chapter 1. I hoped I explained everything well enough. So heading up to chapter 2. Okay, apparently not, because the stream froze. Okay, no, he's at chapter 2. So every chapter has its own unique mechanics. So, for example, chapter 1 has those zippers, that platforms that just start moving when you touch them or land on them. Like, touching means climbing on them. And the second chapter has its own battle section, which is one unique part of it. And those dream blocks, they just got activated after the cutscene. They skipped there, and you can dash through them. Afterwards you get your dash back, and you can jump out of them. When you can jump out of something, you can do hypers out of them, but it's a really precise trick. You gotta be good if you want to do hyper out of blocks. It's very hard. And there the battle section starts. So Madeline is like a part of Madeline, which is more like scared and has a lot of fears and anxiety, and she wants to like stop us from climbing this mountain, and he's trying to chase us, so to make our life harder. So we just have to run away from her. Like, we're not changing our game plan, like we are still going to try to be the fast one. But in a casual playthrough, she can be really like annoying and exhausting. Like, the game was already stressful, but not super stressful before that. And in this part the game is really stressful, casual wise. But davidaei is doing a good job. Malkuckn also got to the battle section, and I hope I pronounced his name right. Like, what the? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry, but I think I'm doing all right. So yeah, davidaei finishing the battle section. Now going to the end of the dream. So the dream blocks just got activated when you were dreaming. Now you are awake again, so the dream blocks are actually no longer there. And yeah, this part davidaei is right in as currently doing is like, it don't seems like it is one of the most technical parts of the game, but it actually is, because there are a lot of like slopes and corners you can get stuck on, and it's really hard to actually go super fast through that rooms. So malkuckn, hopefully he won't get in any problems with those battle clones. Yeah, he's a little bit close there, but he got through it, so well done by him. So davidaei now entering. Okay, that's pretty weird that his stream freeze during the overworld, but whatever. So he's now coming up on his screen is chapter 3. So chapter 3 is the first like part where the game gets a little bit harder. This entire chapter is based around dust bunnies and cycles. So these black things are dust bunnies, and they always move in a certain cycle. So there's no RNG in this game. And there are two cycles, or two types of cycles: an entrance cycle or transition cycle. There you see he just re-entered the room to get the transition cycle, because he's like unaware of the death cycle probably. So the death cycle just means when you die, the cycle looks different on each room. So you technically, if you wanna be fully optimal for both cases, like if you die or if you just make it first try on your transition, you gotta learn, or you gotta have to learn 2 cycles for it. And it seems like I'm about to getting a co-commentator. If so, I would really appreciate that. And yeah, malkuckn is also entering the chapter 3 already, getting the key, and there he starts. So is he already? No, he's not. Okay, never mind. I just want to take something a little bit early. So I just wait till Rag the Killie gets in here, so he can introduce himself a little bit. I just when he gets in here, I give him a time to introduce himself. So you see there, they have to get those keys to open those doors. Later on you will see they reset the room after they got a key, because keys get carried over even if you die. There you see a key in the middle of the room, in the middle of this big mess. You need this key to get even further in this chapter. So you have to like deal with this big mess, and now Madeline has to clean the hotel, literally. So there are these 3 parts. Each of these parts is for one individual item. You see those boxes, you see those towels and laundries, and you see those books. So we have to clean up all 3 of them. So each 3 of them has its own part, and it changes, depends on in which order you do them. So when you do the book part, or the chest part, there we're doing first in the speedrun, then there are no chests anymore in the laundry and the book part. And yeah, that actually, I didn't notice it in a casual playthrough, but when I then start to learn speedrun, I noticed, hey, the parts actually changing. That's pretty cool. Pretty, not very unique, but it's a nice, it adds something nice to the game. So malkuckn is taking it very slow, but that's okay. Like, sometimes it's better if you take it slow than risky but speedrun-ish. Like a lot of beginners are actually taking a save, and it's actually kind of recommended because if you don't die that often, then casual strats are actually faster than speedrun strats, but with like normally 3 deaths per room, like in the average. So he starts with the big mess too. Like the hotel is split in more or less 3 parts, like the very beginning, the big mess, and then the ending plus the Yoshiro section. Okay, I just have to check Speed Racing Discord because yeah, there's a lot of things going wrong right now, but it's okay. It's alright. So davidaei finished the big mess, and now he's going to the end of the actual hotel part. So there are a couple longer screens he has to complete, but I think he will do great. So yeah, just basic movement stuff. You can do, like, that's really cool in the speedrun. You can actually gain a lot of speed at every part. Like, there's always a way to step up for most of the runners. Well, like, I think even world record holder TGH can step out at some parts a little bit more. So you can always improve yourself with like learning new speed tech. A really, really good game for speedrunning. Actually, it was meant to build for speedrunning, as the developers said, for example, at the Summer Games on Quick Couch or interview. Yeah, I'm still pretty curious. Oh, there he goes. Rek the Kitty is actually finally here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Flash. How are things so far in the race?
It's kinda davidaei got a little bit ahead, but malkuckn is still doing great. So yeah, davidaei is now on the Yoshiro section and doing alright so far.
Yeah, I can see that. Looks like it's a nice and clean Yoshiro. Going through some of the rooms so far.
Oh, got catched there by Yoshiro. So Yoshiro is sometimes not a nice guy.
Yeah, he can really be tricky, especially since the strats for respawning are often very different from the strats for initial entry, so you have to have kind of both on hand if you accidentally end up having to retry the room.
Yeah, that was I already mentioned that, but nice that you pointed out again. So yeah, Yoshiro also change his cycle. Depends if you're in the death cycle or the just transition cycle. As you saw there, you can jump on his head to gain your dash back and to like eliminate him for like actually just a few seconds. So, and he's just chasing your height and tracking your height, and after a certain while he will dash at the height he tracked you. But you can kinda easily dodge him if you know how.
And it looks like he actually opted to retry coming into this last room, which I think in a lot of ways, retrying can make it a little bit easier for that first initial timing. And you see right after the retry, made it through very clean there.
Yeah, the last screen, in my opinion, is also easier in the death cycle than in the transition cycle. So yeah, well done by him.
It can definitely give you a little bit more wiggle room. It looks like on the other screen, they are just coming out of cleaning up the mess and are moving towards getting to that final area.
Yeah.
We've
Meanwhile, oh no, he had a go over. No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, transition into Golden Ridge there, saying hi to Granny.
So Golden Ridge adds a new mechanics like every chapter does. So there's, first of all, you can see that wind blowing, which prevents you from moving forward, but with dashes you can like kind of get easy through it. It's still really annoying. And there are those bubbles, you can get in them. It's like an extra dash in the air. And I think I forgot something. And the clouds, you can like, with the right timing, you can jump up higher.
They can give you a nice big jump. We're actually going to see that here in this next room. All 3 of them set, and you can see it gets you nice and high up there as they jump off of it.
Yeah. So that's all the mechanics or new mechanics in Chapter 6.
Yeah, I feel like Golden Ridge, this area with the wind here, I feel like it can really be very difficult for a casual playthrough especially, but even getting new to the speedrun, the wind can be very, very confusing, and it can make things very, very difficult to figure out exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. So the wind, especially in a casual playthrough, is like one of the most annoying parts in this game. In a speedrun, I would say Golden Ridge is actually more of a chill part in the run. Like, I don't feel that stressed going through Golden Ridge than I feel in other chapters.
There we go, and they've made the jump across that area, which is a nice little time save to not have to wait for the elevator to cross that gap, or to wait for the green block.
Yeah, so technically there are no auto-scrollers in the game, but sometimes you normally, or in the vanilla way, you have to rely on those moving platforms. But we are speedrunners, so sometimes we think, those platforms are too slow, so we just try to skip them as much as we can.
Yeah, waiting on something else. I'll skip that directional platform and I'll just use some dashes. Going on, yeah. Looks like on the other screen, getting about halfway through Ashiro there, making some very good progress.
Yeah, Ashiro is very hard and tough, especially for newer runners or casuals. He is a really tough challenge, also because these rooms are fairly long, so if you die once, you have to start all over again. You can get frustrated and lose focus very easily.
Absolutely, it can be really, really difficult, and it can be such huge time loss if any mistakes happen on them. Some of them, like this room right here, are fairly short, so having a death isn't necessarily the end of the world, but say the last room can be a significant time loss if there's any trouble. Coming over, you'll notice at some points the wind actually stops. In a lot of areas the wind is static and will just always be with you or always against you. But for a couple of these rooms here, you'll see that it comes on, blowing the player forward, and then will occasionally stop. So you have to kind of transition through the room mindful of those periods of whether it's blowing or not.
Yeah, it's all just about getting the feeling for the wind rather than like, yeah, just to. I think it's more like getting a feeling for it than like actually perfect doing your cycle stuff.
Yeah, and
I have to say it.
Absolutely, and we're going to see a couple of snowballs coming here. These snowballs will be progressively coming across from the exit of the screen, level to where the player was when they started coming. And again, a sense of timing can really make things very troublesome if you end up off track. So far, it looks like not a whole lot of trouble transitioning through the rooms, going very quickly, fairly clean.
Yeah, that one, like you can also jump off snowballs, and that one jump off a snowball looked not very, it looked very weird actually. I don't think that was on, what's the opposite of accident?
Intentional?
Intentional, yeah, right. So I don't think that was intentional, but it looked pretty sick.
Intentional or not, it certainly worked, and it certainly saved a good amount of time. As you can see, jumping off that snowball does give a dash back as well, so it can be very, very useful if you're able to do it intentional or otherwise.
So now he's on the last screen, davidaei, and he's done it very perfectly well. So 4:10 is a good time. Like, not a perfect one, but I think for his level of skill, he can be happy with that time.
Yeah, and meanwhile, second screen is just entering Golden Ridge, so if they have a good one, there could definitely be some time save. It all just depends. Seems like so far they're going through just in the first couple of rooms, grabbing a nice little strawberry there for a snack.
Yo, that was, I don't know why he collected it. Maybe it was on accident. Maybe he just do it for the fans. So meanwhile, davidaei is in the Mirror Temple, which is the 5th chapter of the game. There are now red bubbles which travel infinitely until they hit the wall or you dash out of them. Or hit a spike. And there are those dash blocks. They always move when you dash, and they move with a very high speed, so you can gain a lot of momentum off these blocks. You might see later on in this chapter.
Yeah, you'll see there's a number of places where being able to use that momentum can get you a couple of things that you might not otherwise be able to do. In particular, at the very beginning, you can use them to kind of push yourself up in a way that you would have to take a little time to do otherwise. Here's another instance. You see dashing, pulls it across, and then you wait for it to go back to its initial spot as well. So crossing the long room, and they're going to go up in this secret little bubble here. And that is a big, big skip, not having to go get a key for that.
Yeah, normally you have to get there a key, but You can find this very well hidden bubble. I didn't find it in my casual playthrough to skip the key. Normally you have to get to the key from another room.
There we go. They're going up into a second section where there's going to be another new mechanic of Chapter 5. And it's going to be this this creature that will sort of lock onto where you are and try and chase after you and dash after you.
Yeah, but now we are just playing at one of these creatures, but later on in this chapter, like pretty soon, they become like the main theme of this chapter. So story-wise, we are now inside the mirror and fighting against our fears, or seeing actually our fears first. And we have to talk with Madeline a little bit, but we are just skipping the cutscenes. And yeah, there in Chapter 5 at this point, things are going actually pretty crazy, like story-wise, and it's pretty creepy. And the first time you're here, you probably don't know what's going on, actually.
Yeah, it can be definitely disorienting. Again, there's those blocks that when you dash, they'll start moving. And now here we see some of these creatures actually start to make a couple of moves on him, chase after him. If it touches you, obviously it will kill you. You'll have to reset the room. Like many other mechanics of the game, landing on top of it will give you a dash back as well as neutralize it for a short time.
Yeah, also good to know is that these monsters can activate the switch for you. So I don't know what's the point behind that, like why it's built into the game, like what's the story point behind that, but it's just nice for a speedrun actually. So you just saw there he jump up the block, so the monster is charging at him and activates the switch for him. So yeah, you can use that in your advantage.
Yeah, now you'll notice that while it didn't touch the lock switch specifically after he had jumped on it, when it comes back in, there is sort of an explosion, and if the switch is in radius of that explosion, it will also activate it. So you can see he was able to kind of just leave it there and trust that when it came back to life, it was going to activate the switch for him.
So yeah, that's that. And upcoming is a pretty big skip. Nearly got it. So the thing you have to do there is an extended backwards super jump or dash jump. So backwards just means you can dash in the opposite direction, change the direction before your momentum gets like ended, and can jump in the other direction with the momentum you've got before. And extended just means that you keep your dash and you can get over that gap rather easily. Like the trick is not that hard, but you can mess it up sometimes. And it saves a lot of time actually. Normally you have to search some keys in that very big area which is dark and nobody really knows in the speedrun.
Yeah, I believe to my knowledge that it is actually the biggest skip in an any percent run.
Yeah, by far it's the biggest skip. Like, it saves a couple of minutes actually.
Yeah, now here's another kind of a conceptual change in Chapter 5. You'll see that Theo has been put into a crystal here, and the player's going to have to carry Theo through every room. Now, if Theo lands on a block, it'll hit it, and at one point we're going to have to use Theo for that. But for the most part, it's a little obtrusive to be carrying him. You can't really dash while carrying him. Jumping is about all you can really do. But you'll notice in a speedrun, a lot of throwing and dashing happens to be able to kind of keep pace while you're moving along.
Yeah, so normally when you carry Theo, you are not as fast as normally. And yeah, Theo movement is just weird. Actually, if you don't know who Theo is, so Theo is like a friend of us during this adventure climbing this mountain. We just found him while he was climbing this mountain too, so that's why he is here. So I think in the speedrun you don't really see Theo that often that you know who he is.
Yeah, as you see there, Theo can also trigger lock switches, which for that particular room you actually need to toss him up through the crystals. He's fine touching crystals. If he goes off a bottomless hole, though, it does result in a restart of the room.
Yeah, so if Theo dies, you die too. And you have to carry him through the rooms. Meanwhile, malkuckn is at nearly the end of Chapter 4. I think.
Yeah.
That's the third last screen as far as I know.
Yeah, both players are in the second to final room. David has actually entered the final room here for Chapter 5. And we'll see in this other screen here, they're just about to enter, yeah, the second to final screen for Chapter 4 as well at this point. So We've got about a solid 1 chapter difference that's staying pretty steady here. Okay, after Mirror Temple does come Reflection, where there's again another couple of different concepts.
So yeah, first of all, there are those feathers you will see very soon, like now. And they just like, you can fly with them through the air a certain amount of distance, but you can, while you are in a feather, collect another feather to extend that. And yeah, it's actually really fast. You can use your analog stick if you have one, depends on what controls you use, to actually do 360 movement with the feather.
And then we see our other new
blocks.
mechanic, the Kevin block, the Crush block, whichever one you want to do. Ramming into it is going to activate it, where it will then start moving the direction the dash originated until it hits.
Yeah, and as every other moving object, you can gain extra momentum jumping off of them. And yeah, later on you will see probably some very fast hypers from those Kevin blocks.
As you can see, thanks to the block ascending, you are able to jump a lot higher than you normally would, which allows the player to jump up into that next room there. All right, on our other player, they've just kind of found Theo in the mirror, so they're progressing through the temple at a pretty good rate. The beginning section is a little bit less technically complex than the ending section, but it's so far a very clean start to their temple.
So yeah, I have to say Mirror Temple is probably, on speed tag perspective, one of the easier chapters, but later on with Theo and also the Seeker section, it gets really technical in another way, I have to say.
I definitely agree with you, yeah.
Like, Theo is a way another thing in this game than any other movement option.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel a lot of the chapters, the first couple of chapters, there's not a huge degree of technical complexity in them compared to some of the later chapters, but I feel like Mirror Temple has definitely some very, very relatively simple sections, and then some very, very complex sections as well. It's probably one of the more diverse chapters, with the exception of the Summit.
Yeah, so one thing we didn't explain yet in Chapter 6 are those bumpers. Do you want to cover them?
Yeah, if you end up hitting a bumper, you will get your dash back, and it will shove you back in the direction from which you hit it, which you can use. It's kind of like a pinball, one of those pinball bumpers. And as you can see, after bouncing off it, the dash is restored, and they get a lot of height for jumping off the top side of it. Though, if you end up hitting it in the wrong direction, you're going to really quickly find yourself shoved somewhere that you might not be able to recover from. So it can end up being really difficult to work with at times. Actually,
very interesting, davidaei took there the top route, so most players going for the bottom route, but the top route is actually, if you play it well enough, a little bit faster, and I barely see any player go for the top route, so very interesting to see that from him. So right there at the part of Chapter 6, you have to choose between bottom and top part, and you can like say, okay, I want to go 2 rooms in the top and then 2 rooms in the bottom, like you can change them all the time nearly. And yeah, I barely see top part there, so.
Yeah, it's definitely rare that I see it. I think it's just interesting in general that Chapter 6 gives you so much flexibility on the route that you want to take and how you move through room to room. I mean, normally you do need to move through just about every room. And Chapter 6, pretty much every room you go through in that particular section gives you a choice of a top or a bottom room to go through.
Yeah, also very interesting is that Chapter 6 is the only chapter where there are no berries in. The reason for that is probably the upcoming battle and fight you will see pretty soon on davidaei's screen. Meanwhile, malkuckn is doing his thing in the Mirror Temple, getting crushed there by the Seekers, so yeah, the Seekers are tough. That's also in the casual playthrough, you have a hard time with them.
Moving through, they've got just another couple of rooms before we end up at the key skip.
Meanwhile, the battle and fight started on davidaei's key, so it's like a boss fight, but there's no actual HP bar, but you just have to get to Battleland you just have to get her in the room and she changes her position, like depends on the room, but it's always the same number. Like it's not random. You always have to go to the exact same spots all the time.
Yeah, she has the exact same sections. You'll notice that in some rooms she'll throw a couple of these attacks out, these orbs that are going in the direction of where the player was when they came out. And then in some rooms, instead she'll opt to fire a laser if you end up taking too long between phases. In a speedrun, you'll see very often, it's actually a little bit rare that a laser comes out. You'll see maybe just one or two. Oh, look at that, a hit with a laser simultaneously.
That's weird. Yeah, like the Battleon hitbox is very big, like it's way bigger than Battleon itself. So, but sometimes attacks trade weird, like you saw there.
Yeah, and then in some cases, in addition to the laser, it'll be alternated with some of the orbs as well. So you'll see it, and it differs in room to room, but it's always the exact same pattern of attacks depending on what room you're in. It's never going to be random whether she does a laser or an orb.
Meanwhile, our other runner is trying to do the search skip. Has a hard time actually with it.
Search skip can be definitely one of those things. The timing can be a little bit finicky.
I actually think he don't know what he has to do because he tries to do not an extended super or backwards.
Yeah, there's no reverse. He's trying to do it right from the initial wall, which I suppose
I don't know if it's possible. I don't think so.
I guess if you did it right at the very, very end, you might possibly have enough room. You know, you have to jump somewhere between the 10 and 15 frame mark to get your dash back, if I recall correctly. And I suppose if you just managed to jump at the end, you might be able to do it, but it certainly makes it harder. The easier way would definitely
it makes it way harder.
Yeah. Well, we will see what happens. In the meantime, it looks like that's maybe a little bit of a hang-up point.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, actually. It seems like he never practiced or did this or researched actually he just knows that it's a thing.
Well, it's hard to say. When you know, sometimes when I've started running, there can be times where what seems like a really good strat to me, even if it isn't necessarily consistent, is just what seems like the right way to go because I haven't, you know, found something that either worked for me or, you know, something just didn't seem to really fit my playstyle very well. So it could be a playstyle preference.
Yeah, and davidaei finally, his stream is back.
Yeah, David is in the final room here, at least as far as actual combat goes on. And there we go. All the crystals break, and now we're going to have a nice touching reunion with Battleon. And then we're going to see yet another new mechanic introduced. A lot of mechanics introduced here in Reflection, where now when the player is on the ground, they'll be given 2 dashes to use before they count a second time.
Yeah, so that adds a lot of like new tricks or things you can pull off. And yeah, the upcoming chapter, by the way, nice time from him in chapter 6. Like, for me it would be a very nice time. I don't know what his PV is in this chapter. So, upcoming is chapter 7. So chapter 7 was like the final climb. It's definitely the longest chapter in the speedrun and also casually. And it's just like, you see like every part of the entire run again, but now with 2 jumps. Or not like every part, the exact parts, but you see like every theme of the chapters yet again. So you see that's the theme of chapter 6, but now with 2 dashes. And afterwards you will see the city again, like the zippers and just the city style. And then you will see the dream blocks from chapter 2 again. So it's like the final stretch of the game, but very well made. Now with 2 dashes you can mess up with these mechanics again.
Yeah, I believe thematically the reason is that at the beginning of Reflection, Battleon kind of throws you off the mountain down to the very foot of it where all these crystals are. So it's supposed to be sort of climbing back up through it to get back to where you were and then ascend the summit itself. I think most runs, probably about a quarter of the entire run is probably going to be spent on the summit. So it's definitely a very, very long chapter.
For me it's a third, but I actually think it's more than the third than a quarter.
It very well could be, yeah.
Like, I don't know, isn't the IL best time somewhere around 8 minutes? And the entire speedrun is like around 30 minutes optimal played humanly now. So
That sounds
yeah,
about right. So yeah,
it's around a third. So yeah, definitely the longest chapter, but that's all right. Like we enjoy playing this chapter, at least
yeah.
most of the parts.
And I really enjoy kind of seeing the concepts again. There we go. They're getting through that very first section, or at least through the city, the 500 mark. Trying just a little bit farther. Oh, unfortunate.
Sadly, didn't get the recovery. Not again.
Meanwhile, in Temple, we are moving through. It looks like they have opted to go ahead and get the key to keep the run moving.
I was wondering, what is this room? So he's actually doing, like, not the key skip anymore.
Yeah, just going for the original route, which calls for gathering keys to unlock doors so that you can take a red bubble and be able to move through.
Yeah, so casually this section is very long. Casually the entire Mirror Temple is way longer than in a speedrun. So now you'll see how much time you can save with Mirror Skip, because you don't have to play through all these things.
Yeah, and it can definitely, I think, in general, gathering the keys can take probably about a minute and a half or so, maybe a little bit longer, depending on which keys you end up taking. You only need 2 of them instead of all 3.
Yeah, so in total there are 3 man, English is so hard sometimes. There are 3 keys, and you just need 2 to get this bubble, to open the path for this bubble, to get you through the entire room. And the 3rd key is just for a berry, but we don't need berries in any percent.
That's right. Meanwhile, back in the summit, heading through 1,000, moving on to 1,500, which is, again, a reuniting with the dust, trying to go through all of that. So again, the backup strat and the initial entry strat are both going to need to be preserved, so that if the player does have to retry during this section, they have a good idea of what to do.
Yeah, also, probably this is the, like, 1,500 meter section is probably the hardest, because there are 2 very long rooms in the hotel section of the summit, and yeah, the hotel itself was just hard with the cycles and moving things. It messed up a lot of new runners and still some older runners. So yeah, this is probably, for me at least, it's the hardest section of the run.
There can be some very big time loss sections here, especially because, again, the strategy that you might have practiced initially, you could end up getting 2/3 of the way through, and if you end up just getting caught on one piece, you've got to redo it again with a different set, and you might get a little mixed up, or, you worry about the time clock, you get a little bit agitated. It can really, really end up turning against you. What could be a very, very good run up till this point could end up being just demolished at this point. Fortunately, though, it looks like David has gone through everything very, very cleanly, moving into the last section here to be finishing up the 1,500s. It's going very well for him.
Yeah, so finishing with 4 minutes this section. I don't know how good the world record is on this, but it's really good. From my point of view. So there you see, when you screen transition, you get your dashes back as well. On davidaei screen, I've used that fact to get up that room fairly easy.
Yeah, over on the other screen, we are going through the Theo section right now. A little bit close there on that chaser, but they were able to just slide off him. If you are basically standing right in the center of a chaser, sometimes there can be some weird interactions. You can get blown in a very strange direction. Sometimes it can end up killing you. There we go. Managed to get around him and into the next room by the
I want to point out, actually, if you want to see some very unique strategies, or not really strategies, but movement and things, watch on malkuckn's screen right now, because he seems like a newer runner, and newer runners tend to do those Theo screams very, very funny, and not like, they have not a real threat, so they just do it on the fly, and sometimes there are some really cool things going on there.
Now,
so recommend to watch that.
Now, speaking of unique, we just saw a wall bounce on David's screen, and normally you have to take that directional block and you have to carry it all the way across the room. You have to wait for it. It's a very, very long screen. It takes a lot of time. But being able to utilize a dash as it's trying to go through one section of the room, they're able to make it to this new section, and then using a wall bounce afterwards, they can completely skip using it for about 2/3 of the room and save a very large degree of time.
So yeah, that was once again another auto-scroller skip, we like to call it. The other one, I don't know if went for it. I just missed it while I was pointing out the Theo section. So, yeah.
There's so much to keep track of when two people are running, right?
Celeste is so hard to commentate at some points. But yeah, these auto-scroller skips are saving a lot of time, but also are hard to execute.
All right, moving into the 2500 section here, into the Temple Revisited. Meanwhile, Monk is trying to finish off. There we go. Theo keeps moving through. Fortunately, you don't have to do any Theo maneuvering when you're in the Summit version of the Temple.
Yeah, that would actually have been funny. Like, I would have loved to see the taskbot or speedrunners messing around with Theo and 2 dashes. I think there would be a lot of cool things happening.
Now, there's a number of neat skips here in the Summit version of this. You'll see here, by being able to jump off this block here, you can just catch the edge of it on the other side, like they did just there. There you go, and that gives you just enough lift that you're able to get this key. You can skip going down below and having to do a little bit of navigate and get back up. It's a very nice time save.
Yeah, normally you have to go downwards where a few moving spikes are to get to a bubble which shoots you up to the key.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the biggest time save in general, but it's a fairly sizable one for this area. I feel like just in general, the temple part of the Summit has a number of good time saves like that.
Yeah, temple in general is like in the Summit, and the temple chapter itself is like meant to be for a lot of skips. And there he goes for door skip, not getting it. Like, door skip saves 1 second.
There is the attempt. One of the things that I really love about door skip is that if you look at the background, if you see kind of where the cobblestone meets the air of the background, it sort of lines you up if you manage to dash in a certain way to get there. To the point that I don't actually bother looking for the door. I just look at that lineup spot and then dash, and it's so far served me pretty well. There we go. They're through. Perfect.
Very interesting. I never noticed that you can like use the background as a visibility to know where you have to dash.
I'll definitely take the easy button where I can get it. Okay, looks like both of the players are just about to exit Temple. One in Summit, one on the Temple chapter. Yeah. There they go, up to the 3000, the Summit of the Summit.
So that's the final stretch, and you notice there was a flag with a 30. So there are not that many screen transitions. So as a checkpoint, we take those flags instead of a screen transition. Just like, I don't know, it gives more of a feeling of the like actual final climb than having screen transitions. And there you see vertical wind, which messes up with the player. So do you want to explain it, maybe? Yeah,
the vertical wind is similar to the horizontal wind. It's going to be constantly pushing the player down for these first couple of rooms here. Jumping isn't going to be as effective. You're going to fall a lot faster, and then at a certain point, it's going to be wind that is pushing you up instead, where it's going to be the exact reverse effect. You'll fall a little bit slower. You'll be able to jump a little bit higher. You'll notice coming through the Summit with the addition of the double jump compared to all of the areas that they're going through, you're going to see a lot of wall bouncing in general. You've already seen a lot of it coming through this initial section, and that really doesn't stop. There's many sections that you're able to do wall bouncing. Like there, for example. All right, looks like on our second screen, we have ended up passing out of the Temple chapter, so they're going to be going into their reflections. So far, it's been a very clean Summit going on. Yeah, not a whole lot of hesitation, very precise movements.
Yeah, so the Summit, like the last 3,000 meters, is one of the like most fun gameplay-wise parts in the game. I would say, like, yeah, it's just like feels cool playing through those parts, and that's about it. Like, you have to actually really climb the mountain by climbing walls, dashing somewhere, get a jewel, dashing more, climbing more. It feels like the final challenge, but still is fair and fun to play.
Yeah. Now this section in particular, you'll notice segments like this of Crystal where it really is very precise about where you need to be using these two dashes. As you can see, at this point, even though you have 2 dashes, I mean, there's very few ways that you can really get through here without a lot of technical tricks. And for that sort of set, I feel like in other areas the player has a lot of flexibility on where they can dash. And here, they really have to be very precise and very, very keen on their timing to get through these. But as you'll notice, they're able to get through fairly smoothly due to probably a lot of practice.
Yeah, casually, this is one of the more harder parts because you are used to get to the ground pretty fast once you dash, and there you will be airborne very long and have to like refresh your dashes with the jewels, and it's a very long part and you're likely to die there a lot casually. So I died there a lot.
There we go, moving on, just a couple of flags to go here, just a couple more stream transitions. You're going to notice right after this section that the wind has died down again, so it's basic mechanics for the rest of that, at least basic as far as gravity and how much the air is working with you. So players will kind of get back to that for just the last couple of flags here, and you'll see kind of a slew of mechanics from the other sections coming in. We saw the clouds, there's the feathers, are all kind of making a reappearance here for this very final summit.
Yeah,
There.
so that's the second last flag, and the number 1 is the last one, and number 0 is like top of the mountain, and the time of the game, like there, the run stops, and it's done.
Yeah, and they are coming to it just about here. This is definitely, I always worry it feels like this last big hurdle. Because from a technical standpoint, the 1 flag is not the most difficult. There's just a couple of pieces of crystal.
Yeah, it's very, very easy, actually.
Yeah, but there's always, you know, some agitation and trying to save those last couple of seconds, and there we go.
Yeah.
They have managed to cross over.
42-12. 14, actually. Okay, very good time.
A very good time. Absolutely phenomenal.
I don't know his PB, but I might look it up really quick.
David's PB is a 39.57, so that's a very, very good run compared to PB. Meanwhile, over here on the other screen,
We actually got the PB 1 day ago.
That's fantastic. You've been seeing a lot of PBs in the tournament, I think. A lot of people have been getting it during the races.
Yeah, like, it's more likely common because you don't focus on streaming and talking with the chat. Like, most runners shut down the chat and the stream and not the stream, but the chat and just the game audio, listen to the game audio and don't talk so they focus more on the game, which can help a lot actually, especially during a game like Celeste where you're always under pressure, I have to say. So yeah, GG's to David.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, going through here, jumping off of those sort of those pinballers there.
The PB 1 day ago.
That's fantastic. You've been seeing a lot of PBs in the tournament, I think. A lot of people have been getting it during the races.
Yeah, like...
Go ahead and kind of keep track here on the second screen. They are moving through. They're getting towards the end of this area so that they can get up to be facing battle line.
So there you see on the other screen that he just had 47 deaths, so if you play that game casually, it's very low number, like you will be impressed, and for speedrun is still pretty good. For 42, I have to say, it's actually really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a fantastic run, especially if the PB is basically a 40. I think in a race condition, you're usually going to be expected to see a little bit of time loss just because, you know, you might be kind of seeing how your competitor's doing. You might be, you know, trying to push yourself maybe a little bit harder. So I think that's absolutely a great time. Yeah,
it looked like he went a little bit slower on some parts just to be more safe. And it worked out because he didn't die that often.
Yeah, and I feel like you sort of have those two mentalities in a race. Either there's, you know, you utilize safe strats to really try and do as consistent as possible, or you try and do aggressive strats to sort of put pressure onto your opponent. Here we go, getting down towards the second section here. They've said hello to Granny, and they're working their way towards battle line now. which involves going a couple of rooms. This is probably one of the longer rooms in Reflections, especially if you try and take the shortcut. If you end up having a little bit of trouble right on the ending section, it can be very, very substantial time loss. We're seeing bouncing off those blocks. You can slide through this, and by aligning yourself on that, that gets you through the second one. Then there's a third set of crystals here that you can jump through. Oh, and almost. If you end up skipping that second section, there's a place that you can stand on that serves as a checkpoint. But if you try and go through all three, then you don't get any such checkpoint, unfortunately. You'll notice over here there is a stretch of land. There we go. Right here, this serves as a checkpoint if they do end up having a little bit of difficulty on this third swap. You'll notice rather than starting at the beginning of the room, they do get to pop up right here instead, which is a little bit of an easier and more forgiving way if it's a troublesome area for you. Going and traveling down through, I call it the water elevator. And it's just the one section where you actually have to really travel through water to super get through a room besides the very beginning. Now we're going to be traveling across, and they will be at the battle line section then. Take a nice little ride on the Kevin block, and there we go. They have started their boss fight.
So, yeah, we earlier said in the speedrun this fight is fairly quick and you don't see that much action, but in a casual playthrough or if you don't know proper speed spreads, this boss fight can be really tough and exhausting and hesitating, and it's also super long in a casual playthrough. It feels like hours.
Yeah, without any strats, you know, if you manage to kind of work through all these falling blocks and you get her once, you get her twice, but then you fall down at the very end, well, you've got to start it over, unfortunately. So kind of being able to see exactly what's happening the first time you enter a room, and then sort of see, you know, the blocks that fall for that next section and then the ones after. It can take a couple of attempts just to sort of get a handle on everything that's going through, to say nothing of actually being able to get through all the lasers and everything else. It can be a very hectic area of the game.
Yeah, it's also like built up with a lot of muscle memory if you like remember the rooms properly and where you have to do like certain dashes and stuff. So yeah, it takes some time to master this section, especially this one.
Absolutely. I feel like in terms of runners' times, you know, when you're actually doing your races or when you're doing your runs, normally there are tricks that can be very difficult for a runner, and it's just something that, you know, they might get or they might not. But I feel like in general, chapter times can be fairly consistent from run to run. This is one of the big exceptional chapters where I think you can see a lot of variance from one run to the next on a runner, just based on wherever they might have hangups and wherever they end up having a little bit of a slip.
Yeah, like there are rooms where you lose like just a second or so, or a few, like very little seconds. But there are also these long rooms, and if you die on them once or twice, getting frustrated and don't be able to calm down or regain focus, you will lose a lot of time.
Yeah, this is definitely an area where getting flustered can be your worst enemy. Absolutely, you're towards the end of the run, but there's still a long way to go. It's a very unforgiving set of sections. There's not a great deal of flexibility, especially if you end up off the rails. It can be very, very challenging. Seeing so far they're working way through. They've got a couple more rooms before you get to this little heart-to-heart that they have. And then they'll have the back section of laser rooms, and then they will be able to ascend onto their summit as well.
So yeah, I think for this set of skill, he is doing the last recent rooms very well. Like, if you don't die, you're already doing something good if you're a new runner. Like, I think dying is one of the biggest enemies for new runners. And the biggest time loss, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. They're certainly trying to route things out. You know, having to maybe take some slower routes or having to find some slower routes can definitely be a time loss. But just trying to get the consistency down is definitely a big, big thing.
Yeah, like, you probably can say this in every speedrun, like getting consistent is probably the most important thing. But like there's and Celeste is a very rare game without RNG, so it's all about like getting consistent and your speed threats done. So you can't say, I've got my speed threats done, but I've got bad RNG. No, there's no bad RNG in this game. It all comes to you down.
And I feel like it's one of the, I say few games, but it's difficult for me to think of a game that's caught so much running interest that has no RNG in it whatsoever. And it's really, I personally really enjoy that there are games with very, very little RNG in it.
Yeah.
Just a couple more rooms to go here. They've got this one and one more room with the lasers, and then they'll be able to kind of make their ascent up towards Summit once they get that double dash.
Also, gameplay-wise, it's very well made. So whenever you hit Madeline, she pushes you off, and in the last room we just saw, you have to use this momentum to go further through the room. Otherwise, you will just land on spikes if you don't use the momentum you get there.
Yeah.
So it feels very smooth and fair when you play it casually.
Now they are actually having a very good run. I believe their PB is checking it a 1:49, an hour and 49.
Okay, yeah,
so they're really on track
on a
to
really good pace.
Yeah, he could wildly PB this run right now.
So and probably this, like when his time is a 49, I don't like say it has to be his second run, but I think probably this is the second run. When you think about, he didn't really know how to do key skip, but he know there is a key skip.
It could definitely be a sign of someone that's a little bit newer to the running scene. Maybe they don't have a quite as solid of an idea of the routes, but definitely, I mean, so far they're doing very, very well.
Yeah.
And going into the Summit at this time, I mean, this is going to be a PB by probably about 20 or 30 minutes, so that's going to be a really, really satisfying moment for him, I imagine.
Yeah, only if he, like, messes up on Summit very, very big. Well, which is a thing, like, I've seen, like, actually a few people who got a really hard time with Summit and lost literally everything there. And, yeah, Summit is tough for new runners. It's fun to play, but it's also tough.
Summit is definitely a big, big challenge, especially because any concepts that you might have had difficulty with the first time around in the chapter, you're going to ultimately have to face again, since it really does cover just about every mechanic or concept in the game again in these sort of bite-sized pieces. So hopefully they'll be able to go through it right now. It looks like things are generally fairly smooth. A little bit of a hitch in that room right there, but this one is hopefully going to pass by fairly quick. Yeah. Over the first set of bounces, and there we go. They've made it through the second one, and they're moving on. As you'll notice, there's those crystals there that do give you dash back, but by being able to utilize a dash right at the very beginning there, you are able to sort of reset it and not have to use either of them. And we are seeing them moving into their 500 section. So far, a very nice time for their opener.
So now at 500 meters, using the zipper mechanic again. They just saw, I didn't think he got, I think he didn't know how far he will get pushed by the block, so that's why he overshoot the entrance. But that's okay, like, in the beginning, when you're learning the game, sometimes you get actually impressed how far Madeline can be, like, pushed by just momentum.
I'll tell you, I'm still impressed by how far she can get pushed by momentum. It can really surprise you
at some parts. It's actually really crazy what speedrunners or the task can do with this game. So if you want to see this game pushed at its limits, just watch the task. I think its record is something 25 something. It looks really impressive and crazy what the task can do in this game.
Yeah. There we go, jumping through all these lock switches. There's the last one, and climb, climb, climb. There we go, moving on again. Getting towards the end of the 500 section here. They have just another couple of rooms.
Yeah, in that room you have to like carry the momentum over from that block. There we go. the first time he kind of failed a little bit.
Now, one thing that we didn't necessarily talk about that we can talk about in a second here is for the final room of every particular section, you'll see a purple orb. And if Madeline can reach that purple orb, Madeline will kind of give her a little boost up. It'll refresh both of your dashes. Madeline will move on to a new section of the room, and you'll have to touch the orb again. And once you touch every orb in succession, then you will be able to be sent on the mother of all jumps up into a new area. So you see there's the completion of 500 moving on to area 1000 now.
Yeah, and the area 1000, like the chapter 2 part of chapter 7, it's actually a lot of fun to play because you have 2 dashes, and with those dream blocks you're like constantly dashing, which is very fast paced, and you will feel like an actual speedrun.
It's a very fluid section. Every time you go through one of these dream blocks, you'll notice that no matter how many dashes you had remaining, you do get both of them back again. So it's just really, you hardly ever touch the ground in this particular section. It's really just dash, 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 and it feels super fluid. It feels, I think it's a very satisfying section. It just feels very quick.
Like, chapter 2 already felt very quick, but this tops it, like, obviously.
And that's one of the great things about sort of the final chapter of the game. Now that you have this second dash, being able to see those same mechanics and deal with them in a very quick, fluid manner is just a very satisfying resolution of the game as you're going through, especially for a speedrunner. There we go, getting through these last few dream blocks, and now you'll see we're on the last room of the 1000 section. There's the purple orb with battling. As long as we can touch all of them. And there we go, on to 1500. All right, and we're going to drag David in here.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hey, hello. Thanks. It was fun.
Congratulations to you. Did you have any major thoughts while you were doing it? Were there any kind of areas that you were worried about, or anything that you thought you were really, really going to be consistent on?
Yeah, there's a few things. I remember in the Mirror Temple, I think I got a lot of the strats that I've been trying recently. Like, I got a few new strats yesterday, which I was trying in Mirror Temple to get it faster, especially the unraveling part with the Seekers. And I pretty much got all of them right pretty quickly. A few things I'm a little unhappy with was a lot of stuff in Summit. I think I lost like 30 seconds trying to go for the skip. But you know, it was worth it for that time save, right?
Yeah, always got to be seeking the time save. Yeah, I remember the Mirror Temple seemed very, very clean. It looked like a very, very solid part of the run.
Yes.
Also, one question. For me, it kind of looked like you didn't play like as aggressive as you would if you go for a PB. Like, you took a lot of safety sometimes, or just played slow game instead of a fast game. Is that actually true? So just for tournament safeties, you took a little bit slower on some parts. Like, you didn't die that often, so it kind of paid off.
I actually think I died a little too much. Actually, I play at the moment. I'm going for like pretty safe strats and just like never dying to try and get PBs. That's pretty much how I'm doing it at the moment. I do for like, obviously I do like some skips that I try and do, but like generally I'm gonna go like relatively slow and then I just get PBs. I actually got a PB today, so I thought I'd do a little bit better than the 42 I got, but yeah, it's okay.
Oh, congratulations! What's the new PB? I see on Speedrun. You were down at about a 39. I think was it a 39.57?
Yeah, it was yeah, I got it while practicing for this run, like 20 minutes before the run or something. It's only like a 20 second PB, so I think it was like a 39, 30, 40, something like that. But yeah, I was feeling pretty good before the run, but you know, the run nerves got to me, I guess.
That's got to be a good feeling for a warm-up to get a new PB.
Yeah, it was good.
Fantastic. Do you have a favorite area of the game as far as speedrunning?
Speedrunning, not really. I mean, I like the first 2 chapters, but that's probably because they're the easiest. And casually, I really like Mirror Temple. Mirror Temple's my favorite casually. There's like so much depth to that chapter. I really like that.
Yeah, Mirror Temple can definitely be a lot of fun. I remember being kind of in awe of it when I was kind of running through it casually for the first time.
Yeah, I think I got lost for so long in that chapter.
Yeah, Mirror Temple is very confusing casually.
I had no idea where I was going.
Definitely. So there can be a lot when you're not taking an actual speedrunning route. There's a lot of different ways you can go around. It's a very open area. There's a lot of different lead-off points, and pretty much they either go the correct way or to a strawberry.
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty much, and it's usually the strawberry.
You can do a lot of exploration in Mirror Temple. That's what I like about it, casually. Like, you have to explore all kind of areas to get all your strawberries. Not strawberries, but berries.
Yeah,
oh wait, is it strawberry?
Yeah.
Or no, what? Okay, my English is just not on point.
I really like watching the all red berries runs, speed runs, because they, you get to see like the entire game pretty much, like every single room. So it's really cool to watch that. I want to learn at some point, but it's so hard because it's a lot of berries to remember.
I think the biggest problem you've got with all berries, if you wanna run any percent, you kind of mess up your muscle memory for both categories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tried to learn it a little before, and then I realized I have this tournament, so I was like, oh wait, I need to get my muscle memory back onto any percent.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to start muddling all the strats up right before the tournament begins.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, Malk is going through the Golden Ridge section of Summit now, and coming along at a pretty good pace. As we've been mentioning, this is probably going to be a very nice PB for him, so it's going to be fairly satisfying, I think.
Yeah, someone said in chat. Sorry, yeah?
Go on. Okay.
Oh, someone said in chat.
Sorry.
You go.
So I just want to say he got a lot of trouble in the 1,500 meter section, as we mentioned earlier, which is probably one of the hardest, but he finally got through it, so now you can say what you want to say. Sorry.
I was just going to say that someone in chat was like, I checked as well. His PB run was 8 days ago, and that's when he started speedrunning the game, and he's like already like getting the same PB. I think that's really insane. Because he's gonna PB by like half an hour or something.
Yeah, like definitely. When you start speedrunning this game, you will get, if you work on it from time to time, you will get huge PBs.
Yeah.
Which feels very good.
Yeah, you lose so much so much time just by dying, especially in like long runs.
Yeah, and I feel one of the big things about once you actually start routing things and getting strats done, a lot of the strats, not only are they faster, but they're also a lot more consistent, they're a lot safer. And so you probably reduce your death by doing more aggressive things, which is really kind of unintuitive.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, going through just the end of this section. Do you have any other races planned presently at the moment that you're sort of getting ready for?
Yeah, I think I got 2 more races planned. One is the day after tomorrow, and another one's on the 22nd, so it's a bit further away. I think I've only got 1 more race to do, race to schedule in my group, because someone couldn't make it, so he's disqualified. So I think I've only got 1 more race to schedule, so that should be good.
So it sounds like you've been pretty up to date on getting in all your races and making sure everything's on the schedule.
Yeah, I've been trying to get all my races in the next like 10, 15 days. So I got stuff to do after that.
And they say gamers are procrastinators.
Yeah, nah, I got stuff to do. Got to plan that out.
Well, good. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the new PB as well. Hopefully more races will end up either being very satisfying or hopefully even more PBs.
Yeah, that's the idea. Thanks for commentating. It was great.
Absolutely. Thank you for racing and have a great rest of your day.
Before I go, shout out to Cella. And that's it.
All right.
So that was a nice little interview. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Like those interviews or something, I think a lot of racers or runners actually enjoy it a lot because it feels like more of an opportunity to like represent yourself, you know?
I think it's just fun to sort of be able to talk about, you know, what you were thinking and things like that. Maybe if you, you know, went for a really aggressive strat, or maybe if you tried to take the safe way to do something, you know, just being able to talk about what was going on in your mind. Oh, there we go. They at least made it to the bubble.
Yeah, that was a nice recovery, actually. Like, I probably would have died if I was him, because it was very clutch there.
Yeah, anytime you start kind of blinking back and forth, you can no longer climb. Madeline is exhausted, and as a result, it can be a very, very dangerous time since you can't grab onto walls or actually scale them. So being able to manage to jump to that save point there probably saved that room.
So he has a lot of problems with that room, it seems like.
It can be a rough one. Now, one thing you might notice is whenever he's dashing, you'll see that there's a little bit of shudder. And that's actually an option that you can turn on or off in the options menu. I personally disable screen shake because I feel like it disorients me a little bit when I'm trying to do my dashes. There we go, moving through. Just a couple more rooms here, and then they'll be moving on to their own version of the final summit, the 3000 section.
So when I started speedrunning this game, I turned off the shovel too, but casually I played with the shovel. Like there, I didn't bother me that much because I don't have to do those precise things. But in the speedrun, there were a few rooms where I thought, okay, that shovel effect, the shake effect, messes up my timing and my vision. I don't want to go any longer with this.
I'm not sure if I was aware it existed until I was doing Seasides, where I turned it off for similar reasons. So here's the final area. And you'll see again, you kind of have to be timing the dashes to sort of keep everything laid out in a way you can work with, touching the battle in orbs to keep moving up through the temple. And if you end up missing one of those, it can be a little bit disorienting to get to the top and realize that she's not there waiting for you. And there we go. Perfectly done, and moving on to the final section. Here we go again, just 30 flags between them and a new PB.
So yeah, that's definitely doable. Like he has to intentionally not getting it if he wants to not get it.
Well,
but I don't think he will get it.
Hopefully so. There could be some hang-up areas, especially these areas can be very, very technically precise and demanding, which, considering the rest of the game gives a surprising amount of flexibility to where and when you can dash, they can really be a hang-up. There can be some rooms, you know, flag, I think it's 13 where you have to get the lock switches. That can be a very hard one. That can be very time-consuming if you end up dying on it. Just a couple of areas like that could really cause some hang-ups for players.
Also, the ninth flag was for me one of the harder ones, and the second last is also one of the harder ones considered by most people.
There we go, and you notice they're touching every flag, which again, you don't have to touch flags. They're not required, but it makes things very, very safe and consistent, because then if you end up having a hiccup in any particular area, you just pop back to the last flag that you touch. So certainly better to jump back to, say, flag 22 than flag 26 or 27.
Yeah. It's just safer, that's all of it. And it don't lose that much time. Like, I wouldn't either think about not getting one of those flags if I, like, above 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Like, I would say from the point of where you're fighting around, getting sub 40 might matter a little bit. Like, it's an easy time save from that point. You might be more consistent with your tricks, so... Oh no, he's falling downwards.
Oh dear.
To get upwards.
Oh dear. There we go. There we go. They've reignited the rockets.
Ah, that looked so rough. Actually.
Yeah, I feel like if you're really right on the cusp of a PB or right on the cusp of a milestone, say, you know, sub-hour or sub-50 or sub-40, then there may be a couple of flags where you can save just a second or two by not touching. And in some cases, that could be all the difference. In the grand scheme of things, I think for the most part, it's probably easier to touch just about all of them, maybe skipping one or two just out of a sake of convenience. There we go, and they're going to climb up here so they can use the second dash to get up, and ooh, just barely snagged the edge of it. Look at that.
Yeah, that jump he did there, it looks actually very tight, and actually very tight, I have to say. It's just
It looks tight. It is tight. Absolutely.
yeah, you have to be very precise with that last dash. Not only it's supposed to grab the wall on the left side to get extra height, but he just said, nope, I don't need this wall. I am good enough.
Yeah, the upwind can be very, very helpful in some cases, but even with the help of the upwind, that particular section does not give a lot of flexibility. There we go. There's the first two. Couldn't quite make it to the far end, though. Let's try that one more time.
So yeah, that was one of the sections you mentioned, right?
Yeah, this is I think probably one of the biggest hangups of the 3000 section, just because you have to keep kind of bouncing back. In a casual run, most of the time you'll do just one lock per bumper you hit, and there's so many areas where you could just accidentally slide a little too far, a little too near. But hey, you got through on the second. There's the flag. They never have to do it again for the rest of the run.
That's why I'm not skipping flags yet, because I think once I get through a part, I don't want to do it again. So
absolutely. I think probably something in the realm of about an hour and 16 or maybe an hour and 17 minutes is looking very feasible here, which again is going to be a very sizable PB.
Yeah, definitely.
Now you mentioned this upcoming one here as your personal hang-up, number 9.
Oh, actually not that one, the one afterwards. Oh. I'm sorry. Like with 9, I mean from the checkpoint 9. Like this section.
Yes.
Is so hard for me.
And it can be very precise. You have to do the vertical dash up and then immediately do another vertical after sliding around.
Wow.
You really have to have the timing exactly. And look at that, through in one go.
And that's why you go for the flag, because if you mess up, you don't have to do this again.
In speedrunning, particularly players that are pushing for more aggressive times, you might see them skip flag 8 just because going left will save you about 2 or 3 seconds. And you really have to know exactly where to be going on that, because having to start back at 9.
It's one of the more common not used flags in the run. Like probably the most common.
I believe it is probably one of the most common, yes. Now, one thing you'll notice is they were wall jumping there. They had completely run out of energy, but by wall jumping, which is to say by doing a jump without having any input, they're able to actually make height. They're able to actually gain altitude on the wall. They were able to get to where they needed to be despite not being able to manually climb it.
Yeah, so it's called neutral jump, this technique, so you don't press any direction jump off the wall, and you just jump a little bit off the wall, and then you can immediately press back against the wall, and you would gain height even without stamina. So possibly with this technique you can climb up every wall in the game without using stamina.
Yeah, there are a number of cases where if you just run out of energy before you're able to get to the top of a wall, a neutral wall jump can be the difference between having to reset a room and being able to properly make it.
Yeah, and the timing is not too hard, but it's a little bit weird, I have to say.
It can be a little unusual until you get used to it. So here we go, getting through here. This is possibly one of the... I think this is probably the last major hurdle. 2 can be a little bit tricky, but this just due to the length of it, having to get the feather, having to get the other one, being able to aim, do the dashes. Once they're able to get through this, hopefully they will be very, very near finishing. There we go, there's the 2 dashes, grab the feather, and now they just have to make it through that pocket. Not quite, almost.
To get through this gap with 1 dash, because you need the second one for, like, getting to the floating block there with the second last flag.
Yeah, you have a couple of options. You can either try and jump onto the wall on the right side and use that to align you properly, or you can just try and dash through at the right time when you're coming up with the feather. Obviously, the second route is a little bit faster, though the first route can be safer. For people that are either a little bit less experienced or just, if you have nerves or anything like that, if you're just doubting the timing a little bit. A close one there. Now, you notice that they dashed to end up making it to that wall. And normally you would generally dash here and then dash once they climb a little bit more, but you can actually jump that first hurdle without needing it. So even if you end up having to dash the wall, you can still make it, though it ends up being a little bit riskier. close. As you notice that that opening there at the very end is a major hurdle, and it can be really tricky. Trying to time everything, especially the screen is shaking. They're kind of focused on the next flag, maybe. Maybe they're looking at the clock. There can be a number of factors that can really make this a very, very difficult thing to get through.
Yeah, like, especially when you're, like, so good on the pace, like he's really good doing that. Maybe the nerves are kicking in right now and he's unable to do this part. Like, yeah, he might be a little bit too nervous.
Yeah, most of this 3000 section has been absolutely phenomenal. Hey, there we go!
Finally.
Getting
so, yeah, that's the second last flag.
Yeah,
which is like the last hard part, because the last flag is not really hard.
Yeah,
everything after that.
It's long, but it's not
really good.
hugely demanding.
And
Here we go, last flag! And they should be just about 15 seconds or so from the ending now.
So sub 120 is definitely possible. Like, he should get sub 120. Sub 118, unfortunately not really close. So yeah, you can be happy
There
with
it
this
is!
time.
And they are done! They just need to skip that final cutscene. And there we go.
Okay. What?
And that is the end of the run.
That looked weird at the end, like he didn't skip the cutscene, so his time was running.
Sometimes after a really long go of it, it can be nice to just kind of take a deep breath.
Yeah. So I think he wants to join us. So
Sure.
we'll probably...
Why don't you go ahead and pull him on up in here. Hey, congratulations on your run.
I think he's a little bit too shy. Or his mic is probably not working.
No, I can't hear you guys. What? Why?
Oh, that would
Okay, we
definitely
can
be an
actually
issue.
hear him.
Are you able to hear us now at any chance? Oh dear. All right. I think that's going to make it a little bit hard to do an interview. Let's maybe try one more time here. Will you do the honors flash?
Is it now better?
Oh dear. Well, looks like maybe we're not going to be able to do that, however.
So we're given a little bit more of time adjusted. Actually, pretty weird. Like, Discord seems like it's doing its thing.
Well, at any rate, it is a fantastic new PB for them.
Oh, now I can hear you guys.
Oh, well, there we go.
Nice.
Hey,
Congratulations
I'm so
on
sorry.
what appears to be a new PB based on looking at speedrun.com.
yeah, it is. It's a huge PB, actually.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty satisfying. What were you? Were there any kind of major hurdles in the run? Were there any areas that went a lot better than expected? How did you think it went so overall?
I think overall it went way better than I expected it. But I didn't expect the last part to be as annoying as it was.
Yeah, like, the last part of the climb we saw it can probably be a little bit, like, I thought probably you were like a little bit too nervous, like, I want to get this nice PB, and then you just lost focus. That was probably your problem, but I don't know. Just tell us.
I think the biggest problem is that my hands got really sweaty due to being nervous. And I only play with D-pad, so yeah, that made controlling the feathers really hard.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that would definitely make it difficult. Nerves get us all, especially on those last couple of flags. You're thinking, let's just end it. I've got a PB here. Let's just end it.
So
Yeah, exactly.
actually, I'm wondering, was that like your second run ever?
It was my fourth full run. ever, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I only started on the 4th of July, so yeah, I haven't put in that much time
So you
yet.
haven't practiced really anything of the game, or how can I like imagine it?
I practiced pretty much the first 2 chapters and watched all the tutorials for all chapters, so that's pretty much it.
So you're making leaps and bounds so far.
Yeah, like
Pun?
practicing this game is really tough at the beginning, but keep doing your thing, and I will believe in you that you will get your sub 1 hour pretty soon.
You've been getting some really quick times. I mean, this was a huge PB. Hopefully the next one will be a huge PB. Just keep ratcheting it down.
Yeah, I'll try my best, definitely, to get sub 1 hour as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite chapter in the run so far that you've experienced?
Actually, the 2nd chapter is my favorite. I really just like the setting and all that.
The 2nd chapter can be very fun, especially with how fluid it can feel going through the dream blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, again, congratulations on a new PB, and I hope that each race brings you a step closer to that sub hour.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks a lot.
So yeah, I don't have any question left. So is there any question you wanna know, Rag?
I think I'm probably good there. I always like hearing about everyone's favorite chapter because you get so many different answers.
Yeah, that's a really cool question, I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again. And again, congratulations on your run. Congratulations on the PB. And I hope the rest of the tournament goes well.
Thanks
Yeah,
a lot
so too.
for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. Flesh, I think we're probably ready to wrap it up at this point.
Yeah, I guess so too. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for having us here. I think we both had a great time here. Thanks to our 2 amazing runners. Just stay tuned on speedgaming.com or Speed Racing. It's called Speed Racing. There are a ton of other speedrun tournaments here. Huge shout outs to them. They make like competitive speedrunning more of a thing nowadays. Because of them, I have to say. And yeah, just keep tuned for more sellers. Like there's a ton of sellers going on right now with this tournament. It's pretty huge. So you will see like every hour, probably 1 run every day for the next few weeks. So yeah, that's it from my point.
Absolutely. And feel free to check out both these runners. You can see their names up on the screen. Both of them, as you can see, still running Celeste and still showing off a lot of very cool strats here. With a lot of other very cool runners to show off in the tournament.
Yeah, and I hope you did enjoy our commentary. I think we did a good job, so yeah, that's it, I guess.
All right, see you later, everybody. Have a good one.